the dysfunction on the House floor amongst Republicans, if you want to call it that. They can't come to agreement on a speaker. I said in my early narrative, Phill, I talked to a number of people yesterday on the Hill, senior staffers, telling me that Jordan's going backwards. And a lot of the calls that were made backfired, and people are just upset, and they're not voting for him. They don't think he can raise any money, and they're going to lose. So, having said that, where do we go from here, Professor Kline?
Well, my thinking of all this, John, is born from experience. And generally, I say give them room. Choosing a leader is a difficult process, and it involves a lot of discussion. And it's not the prettiest process when you stand inside the door. So there are a lot of discussions going on. There are a lot of important reasons why the selection of the next speaker has to be made in a manner in which it forwards the primary interests of the party most significantly, because the Republican Party generally is becoming the party of civil liberties and freedom more so than the left. So, there's a lot of change going on. And you and I have discussed the possibility of a major party realignment, because it seems as if the Democratic Party has been captured by extreme leftist interests in some fashion, and that many of the more centrist Democrat members of their party are having some hesitation about the leadership there. So, this is a challenging time. I existed in these times in Kansas when I was in the legislature and in leadership there. Kansas has elected more governors by a plurality rather than a majority of any state in the nation. There's always this boiling three-party system that involves Republicans, Democrats, and kind of a populist streak. And it takes time and it takes room. And the media's obsession that things must happen now, and that any discussion that prevents it from happening now is the enemy, is really concerning. It's really, the national media covers this stuff in a very shallow way. Personality conflicts, latest numbers, and so forth, and not in a substantive way. And that applies pressure that should not be applied here.
So let me just ask you something, Phill Kline. How do you think, having served in a lot of capacities, how long do you think this can go on where there's no leader? And do they just give the interim speaker 30 days to fulfill his duties and go from there?
Well, I know this, that if there is a crisis and something must be done, and to the media, everything's a crisis if government is not doing something. We've heard that about shutdowns, and yes, shutdowns can at times make it difficult for some government employees if they're not getting paid. But the shutdowns do not cause America to stop. And in fact, I would encourage all your listeners and viewers to contemplate, how were they hurt in the last shutdown that occurred? And I doubt many can find a direct impact on their lives. So the media always heightens these things. And I believe if something must be done, Congress will find a way to do it. They've got plenty of avenues to do it. This is not a national crisis. And pretending that it is, I think, is irresponsible.
Well, they're just upset because there's no mechanism to spend any money. That's basically what this is. As far as I'm concerned, as long as they don't have a speaker, they can't spend any money. I mean, that's what this whole thing is about. Oh, my God, we have to go a week without spending any money. It's basically it. Well, Phill, I'm going to change gears here a second.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say to the media, everything is a national crisis if the national government is not functioning, because they believe all solutions are found in the halls of Congress. And they're not.
Let me change gears. We have all these illegals pouring over the border. No one knows where the majority of them are. You've got motor voter registration in Pennsylvania now that Shapiro signed, some say illegally. But what is going to stop Democrats from getting illegals registered they simply check the box that says they're a citizen, and then they go and harvest their ballot and put it in a drop box, or they deliver it in some manner in an envelope. That will never get unraveled. You will never get to the bottom of this. This could be millions and millions of illegal votes by just checking a box and putting it in an envelope with somebody that doesn't speak English. And you basically say, hey, check this box here so we can continue to give you money. How are we going to monitor this, and how do we stop this?
Well, we know of two things from since the 2020 election. First of all, that there is a push, actually, to allow non-citizens to vote. And that is occurring within some states, and it's predominantly being driven by the left. Secondly, we know this about the 2020 election. It was the most lawless election in United States history. Unilaterally, laws were broken that broke the chain of custody of the ballot, that prohibited the transparency that is necessary to make sure that your ballots are managed properly. It was done in several ways. One of the most predominant ways was at the encouragement of private interests who invested hundreds of millions of dollars directly into the management of elections, allowing government to put their thumb on the scale to benefit a candidate in the way that they managed the election. That happened in Wisconsin, that happened in Pennsylvania, that happened in Michigan, that happened in Georgia. Those things have been proven, despite the denial that is occurring in this nation. Most of that occurred in the area where a bipartisan commission only 2 decades ago said invites fraud, and that is absentee ballots. There are common sense protections to prevent fraud within absentee ballots. And the reason you have to do that is because the ballot is cast away from trained election workers who cannot do 3 things that they do at the polling place: ensure it's the voter that's casting the vote, prevent intimidation and coercion, and to ensure that the voter understands the ballot.